Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to die and discover that death was just the beginning? Tonight you're not just learning about Valhalla, you're going there. You're about to experience the great hall of the slain, where fallen warriors feast eternally in preparation for the end of the world. Before we begin this journey together, take a moment to like this video. If you enjoy these immersive historical experiences, share it with fellow dreamers and subscribe for more gentle adventures through time. Your support helps us create these peaceful escapes from the modern world. Now, let the weight of today slip away from your shoulders. Feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort, because tonight you are no longer bound by the laws of the living world. You are a Viking warrior, and your story is about to begin. The morning mist clings to the battlefield like the breath of ghosts. You can feel the cold dampness of it against your face, mixing with the salt spray from the distant fjord. Your fingers grip the worn leather handle of your axe, a weapon that has served you faithfully through countless raids and battles. The weight of your chainmail shirt presses familiar and reassuring against your shoulders. Around you, the clash of steel rings out like a deadly song. The ground beneath your feet is soft with morning dew, and something darker, the price of glory, the cost of honor. You can hear the deep guttural shouts of your shield brothers, the sharp crack of wooden shields splitting, the wet thud of metal finding its mark. Your opponent faces you across a stretch of trampled earth. He's tall, this Saxon warrior, with eyes the color of winter sky and a beard braided with bronze rings. His spear point gleams wickedly in the pale morning light. You've fought many like him before, but something feels different about this moment. There's a weight to the air, a sense that the Norns, those mysterious weavers of fate, are watching with particular interest. The fight begins with a dance you know by heart. Step, thrust, parry, retreat. Your muscles move with the memory of 1,000 training sessions, your body responding before your mind has time to think. But then a momentary slip, a patch of mud that wasn't there before, and suddenly the world shifts. You feel the spear enter your chest just below the ribs. It's strange, there's less pain than you expected. More like a door opening than an ending. Your knees find the earth, and you have time to look up at the sky, where grey clouds are beginning to part like curtains. And then you see them. They appear first as pinpricks of light against the breaking clouds, growing larger and more magnificent with each heartbeat. The Valkyries, choosers of the slain, Odin's shield maidens, riders of the wind itself. You've heard the skalds sing of them in the great halls during winter nights, but no song could have prepared you for this reality. Their horses don't gallop through the air so much as they swim through it, their hooves striking sparks from nothing. Each Valkyrie sits astride her mount with the perfect grace of someone who has mastered the art of bridging worlds. Their armor catches light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, not the harsh glare of the sun, but something softer, more eternal. The one who approaches you has hair the color of spun gold braided with silver threads that chime softly in the windless air. Her eyes hold depths you've never seen before, ancient, knowing, but not unkind. When she speaks, her voice carries the sound of distant thunder and gentle rain. "Rise, warrior," she says, extending a hand that gleams with calluses from her own sword work. Your time in Midgard is finished, but your story has only just begun. You find that you can stand without pain. Looking down, you see your body still lying on the battlefield, but it no longer feels like you. It's more like looking at discarded clothing, something you once wore, but no longer need. Your new form feels lighter, more solid somehow, as if you've been carved from pure intention rather than flesh and bone. The Valkyrie's horse snorts a sound like rolling thunder, and she gestures for you to climb up behind her. As you do, you notice that you can still feel everything: the warmth of the horse's flanks, the leather of the reins, the Valkyries' presence solid and reassuring in front of you. Death, it seems, has not diminished your senses, but sharpened them. Where are we going? You ask, though part of you already knows.
To the hall of your fathers, she replies, and suddenly the horse leaps skyward. The battlefield shrinks below you, becoming a patchwork of green and brown, dotted with the tiny figures of warriors still locked in their eternal dance. To Valhalla.
The journey through the sky feels both eternal and instantaneous. Below you, the world spreads out like a tapestry woven by the gods themselves. You can see the winding silver threads of rivers, the dark patches of forests where trolls might still dwell, the scattered clusters of thatch-roofed houses where families are waking to tend their fires and milk their goats. But ahead of you, something magnificent is taking shape through the clouds. The hall appears gradually like a mountain emerging from morning fog. At first, you see only the gleam of its roof shields laid in overlapping rows, each one polished to mirror brightness. Then the walls come into view and you gasp, despite yourself. They're built from spears, thousands upon thousands of them, their points reaching toward the sky, like the prayers of warriors. But it's the size that truly takes your breath away. Valhalla stretches beyond the horizon in both directions, its length greater than any fjord you've ever sailed. The roof is supported by pillars that could be the masts of entire fleets, each one carved with intricate knotwork that seems to shift and dance in your peripheral vision. 540 doors pierce the hall's sides, each one tall enough for 8 warriors to walk through side by side, and from every opening a warm golden light spills out, carrying with it the sounds you never thought you'd hear again. Laughter, the clink of drinking horns, the comfortable murmurs of comrades sharing stories.
How many warriors are there? You whisper to the Valkyrie.
800 come through each door when the war horns sound, she replies. They have been gathering here since the world was young, all preparing for the final battle. But do not think of endings now. Think of beginnings. As your mount descends toward one of the massive doorways, you catch your first glimpse of the einherjar, the honored dead. They move about the entrances like living men, but there's something different about them. Their wounds have healed into scars that gleam like silver. Their eyes hold depths that speak of battles won and lost. And when they notice your approach, their smiles are warm with recognition. Another comes to join the glorious company. One calls out, raising his drinking horn in salute. His voice carries an accent you don't recognize. Perhaps he fell in lands far to the south, where the sun shines year-round and grapes grow on vines. Welcome, shield brother, E'en calls another. This one sounds like he could have been born in the next valley, over from your own village. The mead is sweet tonight. The Valkyrie's horse alights just outside the nearest door, with barely a whisper of sound. As you slide down from its back, you can feel the solid stone beneath your feet, not cold granite, but something warmer, smoother, like well-worn wood that has absorbed the heat of countless fires. This is where I leave you, the Valkyrie says, and there's genuine warmth in her voice. But you will not be alone. In Valhalla, every warrior is both student and teacher, both stranger and kinsman. You want to thank her, but before you can find the words, she and her mount have dissolved back into light and wind, leaving only the faintest scent of lightning and distant rain. Taking a deep breath, you turn toward the door and step into Valhalla. The first thing that strikes you is the vastness. The hall stretches away in all directions, its ceiling lost in shadows that dance with the movement of countless fires. Long tables run the length of the space, each one crafted from a single, enormous oak that must have taken centuries to grow. The benches beside them are worn smooth by the touch of countless warriors, polished to a warm glow that invites you to sit and rest. But it's the atmosphere that truly welcomes you. Despite the massive scale of the place, there's something impossibly cozy about Valhalla. Perhaps it's the way the firelight flickers on the faces of the einherjar, creating islands of warmth and intimacy throughout the vast space. Or maybe it's the sound, not the echoing emptiness you might expect, but the comfortable buzz of conversation, the soft chink of drinking horns touching wood, the occasional burst of laughter that spreads like ripples across the hall. A warrior approaches you, and immediately you can tell there's something special about him. He's not particularly tall or broad, but he moves with the easy confidence of someone who has never met a battle he couldn't win. His hair is red gold bound back with a strip of leather, and his beard is shot through with premature silver. When he grins, you notice that one of his front teeth is chipped. "You have the look of someone who's just arrived," he says, and his voice carries the accent of the far northern lands, where the summer sun never sets and the winter night never ends. "I'm Erica Bloodaxe, though most folk here just call me Eric. Been dead about 40 years now. Time moves strangely in this place." You introduce yourself, and Eric nods approvingly. "Good, strong name. I can tell by the way you carry yourself that you went down fighting. That's what matters here, not how you lived, but how you died. Though," he adds with a wink, "the living part can make for good stories over mead." He gestures toward the nearest table, where a space seems to have opened up just as you approached. "Come sit. You must be hungry. Dying always gives me an appetite, and you'll want to meet the others before the evening's festivities begin in earnest." As you settle onto the bench, which is exactly the right height, perfectly comfortable despite being carved from solid wood, Eric begins pointing out your new companions. There's Magnus the Far-Travelled, who fell in a battle somewhere beyond the edge of the known world, and has been trying to describe the strange customs he witnessed there ever since. Beside him sits Astrid Shieldbreaker, one of the few women among the einherjar who earned her place here by holding a mountain pass against an entire army. "And down there," Eric says, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "that's where the really interesting folks sit. You see the big fellow with the red beard? That's Thor himself. Comes by most evenings when he's not off fighting giants or retrieving his hammer from whatever ridiculous situation he's gotten it into this time." You follow his gaze and see a massive figure holding court at the center of a group of laughing warriors. Even sitting down, Thor towers over his companions, and every gesture he makes seems to shake the very air around him. As you watch, he raises his drinking horn and brings it down on the table with such force that the entire oak surface jumps, sending mead sloshing in every direction. The warriors around him roar with laughter, and Thor grins like a child who's just played the perfect prank. He's enthusiastic, Eric says diplomatically, but good-hearted. Just try not to sit too close when he's telling stories. He gets very animated, and sometimes furniture doesn't survive the experience. As if summoned by some invisible signal servers, begin emerging from side passages you hadn't noticed before. They move with the easy efficiency of people who have been doing this for centuries, carrying platters that gleam with roasted meat and wooden bowls filled with steaming vegetables you don't recognize, but somehow know will taste perfect.
"Ah," Eric says, rubbing his hands together. "Here comes Serimnir. You're in for a treat. This is your first time tasting the flesh of the eternal boar." A massive platter is set before your section of the table, and the aroma that rises from it makes your mouth water immediately. The meat is perfectly roasted, the skin crackling golden brown, and it's been seasoned with herbs that seem to capture the essence of every good meal you've ever eaten. But there's something else in the smell, something that speaks of magic, of sustenance that goes beyond mere food.
Every morning, Derek explains as he carves off a generous portion for you. Serimnir is slaughtered and prepared for the evening meal. Every night we feast on his flesh, and every dawn he returns to life whole and healthy and ready to live another day in the forests of Valhalla. It's quite a life, really. No worries, no responsibilities, just the simple joy of existing in a place where you're appreciated. You take your first bite, and it's unlike anything you've ever tasted. The flavor is rich and complex, somehow managing to be both familiar and exotic at the same time. It tastes like victory feasts and harvest celebrations, like the first meal after a long journey and the comfort of your mother's cooking. But underneath it all is something else, a sense of renewal, of infinite possibility. Do you think, you ask Eric between bites, that Serimnir ever gets tired of being reborn every day? Eric considers this seriously, pausing with his drinking horn halfway to his lips. You know, I've wondered about that myself, but I've also thought, what if that's exactly the point? What if the greatest gift isn't avoiding death, but knowing that no ending is truly final, that every sunrise brings the chance to begin again? Before you can respond, a server appears beside you with a drinking horn unlike any you've ever seen. It's carved from some material that shifts color in the firelight. Now deep amber, now honey, gold, now the pale green of sea foam. The liquid inside bubbles gently, and when you bring it to your nose, the aroma is intoxicating. Mead from Heidrun, Eric explains. The goat who feeds on the leaves of Lerada, the great tree that grows from the roof of Valhalla. They say her milk never runs dry, and the mead it becomes is sweeter than anything the living world can produce. You take a sip, and Eric is right, it's impossibly delicious. The flavor seems to contain multitudes, the sweetness of summer honey, the richness of autumn apples, the crisp clarity of mountain streams. But more than that, it makes you feel peaceful, as if all the worries and fears that drove you in life have finally been laid to rest. The first cup is always the best, Eric says, watching your expression with amusement. Though I should warn you, the effects are somewhat different from mortal mead. You'll find your senses sharpened rather than dulled, your mind clearer rather than clouded. It's meant to prepare us for what's to come. What's to come, you ask? But Eric's attention has been drawn to a commotion at the far end of the hall. A massive figure has entered through one of the great doors, and the entire hall is rising to its feet in respectful silence. He's tall, even by the standards of gods, with a broad-brimmed hat that shadows his face and a grey cloak that seems to move with its own wind. Two ravens perch on his shoulders, and their black eyes scan the hall with intelligence that feels almost uncomfortably knowing.
All-Father, Eric murmurs, and there's genuine reverence in his voice. Odin comes to dine with us tonight.
The one-eyed god moves through the hall like a king surveying his kingdom, which you suppose is exactly what he is. Warriors bow their heads as he passes, not in civility, but in the kind of respect earned through strength and wisdom. When he reaches the high table at the hall's center, he doesn't sit immediately, but instead raises his own drinking horn high above his head. Einherjar, his voice booms across the vast space, somehow reaching every corner, despite the hall's impossible size. Honored dead tonight we feast as we have for countless nights before, and will for countless nights to come. But remember always, why we gather not merely to celebrate what was, but to prepare for what must be. The hall erupts in cheers, drinking horns raised high in salute. But underneath the celebration you sense something else, a current of purpose, of destiny approaching. Eric leans close to your ear.
Ragnarök, he whispers. The final battle. It's why we're all here, really. Odin gathers the greatest warriors from across the 9 realms, preparing for the day when the wolves will swallow the sun and the dead will rise from their graves. On that day, we march out of Valhalla's doors to fight alongside the gods themselves.
You want to ask more, but Odin's gaze has fallen upon your section of the table. For just a moment his single eye, grey as storm clouds, deep as the roots of the world tree, meets yours. In that instant you feel him reading the story of your life, weighing your deeds, measuring your worth. Then he nods just once, and the moment passes. He approves, Eric says, and there's genuine warmth in his voice. Welcome to Valhalla, brother. Welcome to the army of the end times. The mead is just beginning to work its magic on your senses when the great doors burst open with a crash that shakes the very foundations of Valhalla. The sound echoes through the hall like thunder rolling across mountains, and every conversation stops mid-sentence as heads turn toward the entrance. Thor strides in like a force of nature barely contained in humanoid form. He's even more impressive up close than he appeared from across the hall. Easily 8 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the sky and arms that look like they could uproot ancient oaks with casual effort. His red beard is braided with gold rings that catch the firelight, and his eyes sparkle with barely contained mirth. But it's what he's carrying that draws every gaze in the hall. Mjolnir hangs from his belt, the legendary hammer that can level mountains and call down lightning from clear skies. Even at rest, it seems to hum with contained power, as if it's eager to be put to use, crushing giants or splitting open the earth itself. My friends. Thor's voice booms across the hall, somehow managing to be both thunderous and jovial. I bring news from Midgard. The humans have invented something called a windmill, and they're using it to grind grain. Can you imagine? They're making the wind work for them instead of against them. I'm so proud I could weep. The hall erupts in laughter and cheers. Several warriors pound their drinking horns against the tables in appreciation, creating a rhythmic drumbeat that seems to shake dust from the rafters. Thor grins at the response and begins making his way through the hall, accepting backslaps and raised horns from the einherjar he passes. He gets excited about human innovation. Eric explains, leaning close to be heard over the continuing celebration. Last month he spent an entire evening describing how impressed he was with their new iron plowshares. You'd think he'd invented agriculture himself. Thor's progress through the hall is like watching a force of nature interact with civilization. He moves with surprising grace for someone his size, but everything he touches seems to vibrate with barely contained energy. When he claps a warrior on the shoulder in greeting, the man staggers forward a step. When he sets his hand on a table to lean down and listen to a story, the wood creaks ominously under the pressure. As he approaches your section of the table, you notice something endearing about the god of thunder. Despite his overwhelming presence, there's something almost childlike in his enthusiasm. His eyes light up when he hears a particularly good joke, and he throws back his head and laughs with genuine delight at stories he's probably heard 100 times before. Eric Bloodaxe. Thor bellows when he spots your companion. Still telling lies about your exploits in Northumbria, I hope. Only the best lies, Eric replies with a grin. Thor, meet our newest brother-in-arms, arrived just this evening courtesy of one of your father's lovely Valkyries. Thor's attention turns to you, and suddenly you understand what it might feel like to be a mountain in the path of an avalanche. But when he smiles, the overwhelming presence becomes warm and welcoming instead of intimidating.
Ah, a fresh arrival. He reaches out and grasps your forearm in the warrior's greeting, and you're surprised to find that his grip, while incredibly strong, is carefully controlled. Tell me, friend, what was your last battle? I love hearing how mortals face their doom, always so creative, so unexpectedly brave.
You find yourself describing your final fight, and Thor listens with the intense attention of someone who genuinely cares about the details. He nods approvingly when you mention specific sword techniques, chuckles at the description of your opponent's surprised expression, and pounds the table enthusiastically when you reach the climactic moment.
Excellent, he declares when you finish. A good death fought with honor and skill. You'll fit in well here. He pauses, then adds with a conspiratorial wink. And if you ever want to hear about really spectacular battles, find me after the evening meal. I've got stories about giant hunting that'll make your hair stand on end.
A server approaches with Thor's drinking horn, a massive thing that looks like it was carved from the horn of some primordial beast. The god accepts it with a nod of thanks, then raises it high above his head. A toast, he announces, his voice carrying easily across the vast hall. To our newest einherjar, may his sword never dull, his shield never shatter, and his courage never fail. When the final trumpet sounds, the entire hall responds as one thousands of voices joining in a cheer that seems to shake the very stars in their courses. You feel a warmth spread through your chest that has nothing to do with the mead, the feeling of being truly, completely welcomed into a brotherhood that transcends death itself. Thor brings his horn down toward the table in a celebratory gesture, and you have just enough time to grab your own drinking vessel before Mjolnir's wielder's enthusiasm gets the better of him. The horn strikes the oak surface with a crack like splitting stone, and the entire table jumps into the air before settling back down with a tremendous crash. Mead splashes everywhere, soaking anyone within arm's reach, but instead of anger or annoyance, the response is more laughter and cheers. This is clearly a regular occurrence and part of Valhalla's charm.
Sorry about that, Thor says, not looking sorry at all. I get excited. Ask anyone. It's my most endearing character flaw.
One of many comes a dry voice from nearby, and you turn to see a figure approaching who couldn't be more different from Thor if he'd been designed as a deliberate contrast. The newcomer is tall and lean, where Thor is broad and massive, with sharp features that seem to shift subtly in the firelight. His hair is dark as a moonless night, and his eyes hold depths that suggest he's thinking several thoughts at once, none of them entirely trustworthy. When he moves, it's with the fluid grace of someone who has never met a situation he couldn't talk his way out of. Loki, Thor says, and there's genuine affection in his voice despite the slight wariness. I was wondering when you'd show up. Still banned from the high table, I see. Temporarily, Loki replies with a smile that's equal parts charm and mischief. Something about disruptive influence on the dining experience. Apparently, turning the mead temporarily into various woodland creatures was considered poor form. He settles onto the bench across from you with the easy confidence of someone who belongs everywhere and nowhere. Up close, you can see that his clothes are finer than anyone else's in the hall, not ostentatiously expensive, but cut from materials that seem to shimmer with their own light. Everything about him suggests someone who appreciates beauty and craftsmanship, even in exile, And you must be the newest addition to our merry band of honored dead. Loki says, studying you with eyes that seem to catalogue every detail. I can tell by the way you keep looking around like you're not entirely sure this is real. That expression lasts about a week, usually. After that, you either accept the impossibility or go mad trying to rationalize it. Loki? Eric warns, but there's amusement in his voice. Be nice to the new arrival. He's had enough shocks for one evening. I'm always nice, Loki protests, pressing a hand to his chest in mock wounded innocence. I'm simply honest about the nature of our situation. We're dead. We're dining in the hall of the gods, and tomorrow morning we'll spend the day killing each other for practice. If that's not worth a bit of philosophical discussion, what is? You find yourself leaning forward, curious despite yourself. There's something compelling about Loki's perspective, a willingness to question things that everyone else seems to take for granted. What's it like, you ask? The daily battles, I mean. Do you actually feel pain when you die? Loki's smile becomes more genuine, less performative. Ah, now that's the question, isn't it? The Skalds never mention that part in their songs. They talk about glorious combat and eternal feasting, but they're surprisingly vague about the practical details. He takes a sip from his own drinking horn, smaller than Thor's, but more elaborately decorated with intricate knotwork that seems to move when you're not looking directly at it. The honest answer is yes, you feel everything. The bite of steel, the shock of impact, the cold creep of approaching death. But it's different from mortal pain cleaner somehow, pure. And the moment you return to life each evening, the memory of that pain becomes instructive. You remember what it taught you, but not how much it hurt.
Like how you remember being burned by fire. Eric adds, but you can't actually recall the sensation of burning. Exactly. Loki nods approvingly. Although I should mention that some of us have found ways to make the whole experience more interesting.
Thor groans and covers his face with one massive hand. Please tell me you haven't been experimenting with the resurrection process again. Nothing dangerous, Loki says, innocently. I simply discovered that if you die in a particularly creative way, the return to life can be quite entertaining. Last week I convinced myself to try death by tickling. The revival process was extremely peculiar. The entire table stares at him for a moment before erupting in laughter. Even Thor can't maintain his disapproving expression, and soon he's chuckling along with everyone else. Only you, Thor says, shaking his head, would find a way to make even death into a performance art. Someone has to keep things interesting, Loki replies. Eternity is a very long time to spend doing the same thing every day. A little creative interpretation never hurt anyone. Tell that to the time you convinced half the einherjar that they could learn to fly if they jumped off the roof of Valhalla, Eric says. They did learn something valuable about the nature of gravity, Loki protests. And technically everyone survived the experience, eventually. You're beginning to understand the dynamic between these three. Thor represents straightforward power and honest enthusiasm. Eric embodies the practical wisdom of experience, and Loki provides the spark of creativity and questioning that keeps the eternal routine from becoming stagnant. Together they form a strange but effective balance. But enough about my minor experiments in applied mortality. Loki says, turning his attention back to you. I'm more interested in hearing about your former life. What brought you to that final battlefield? What drove you to take up the sword and shield? The question catches you off guard. In life, you'd never really thought about your motivations in such direct terms. You fought because that's what warriors did. To protect your family, your village, your way of life. To earn honor and glory, certainly, but also from a sense that some things were worth fighting for. I want it to matter. Each you find yourself saying, surprised by the honesty of your own words. I wanted my life to mean something beyond just existing from one day to the next. Loki nods approvingly. A worthy goal, and now what do you want from this new existence? You consider the question seriously. Around you, the great hall continues its eternal celebration. Warriors sharing stories, servers moving between the tables, with endless supplies of food and drink, the warm glow of firelight creating pockets of intimacy throughout the vast space. It's peaceful in a way you never experience in life, but there's also an undercurrent of purpose, of preparation for something greater.
I want to be ready, you say, finally, for whatever comes next.
Good answer. Thor rumbles approvingly. That's what we're all here for in the end. To be ready for the final battle when everything we've learned and everyone we've become will be tested against the forces of chaos and destruction. Though I do hope, Loki adds with a sly smile, that when that day comes, someone remembers to make it interesting. The end of the world should at least be entertaining. As the meal begins to wind down, the character of the Great Hall shifts subtly. The intense focus on food and drink gives way to something more relaxed, more social. Warriors begin moving between tables, sharing stories, and renewing friendships that span centuries. The servers clear away empty platters and refill drinking horns with practiced efficiency, but they also begin setting up something new, musical instruments that gleam in the firelight. This is my favorite part, Eric says, settling back against the table with his horn cradled in his hands. The storytelling hour. You'll hear tales tonight that would make the greatest skalds weep with envy, and they're all true. A harp appears as if from nowhere, its strings already singing softly in the warm air. The warrior who carries it is small by Valhalla's standards, though she would have been impressive in mortal life, compact and graceful, with intricate tattoos spiraling up her arms and silver threads woven through her dark hair. When she begins to tune the instrument, the entire hall gradually quiets, drawn by the pure sweet notes. That's Ingrid, harp singer, Loki explains quietly. Died holding a mountain pass against an entire Saxon army. She was the daughter of a skald, and she's kept the old stories alive here better than anyone. When she plays, even the gods listen. Ingrid's fingers dance across the strings, coaxing out a melody that seems to capture something essential about the human experience. Joy and sorrow intertwined, triumph built on sacrifice, the bittersweet knowledge that all things pass, but that beauty can transcend even death. As the music swells, other instruments join in a drum that pounds like a heartbeat, a wooden flute that sings like wind through pine trees, horns that call across impossible distances. But it's when Ingrid begins to sing that the real magic happens. Her voice isn't the prettiest you've ever heard, but it carries a weight of truth that makes every word land like a physical blow. She sings of the creation of the world when the gods fashioned the earth from the body of the giant Ymir and set the sun and moon racing across the sky. She sings of the first humans ask, and Embla breathing their first breaths under the shelter of the great ash tree. As the song continues, you notice something remarkable happening. The carved decorations on the walls and pillars seem to respond to the music, their intricate knotwork shifting and flowing like living things. Dragons chase their own tails in endless spirals, while warriors march across wooden landscapes that stretch beyond the boundaries of their frames. The hall remembers, Eric whispers. Every song, every story, every moment of joy or sorrow that's ever echoed through these walls. Sometimes when the music is just right, you can see them all playing out at once. Ingrid's song shifts, moving from creation to the great adventures of the gods. She sings of Thor's fishing expedition when he nearly caught the world serpent, and came close to ending the world ahead of schedule. She sings of Odin's quest for wisdom, hanging himself from the world tree for 9 days and nights to learn the secrets of the runes. She sings of Baldur's death and Frigg's tears of Loki's children and the binding of Fenrir. But it's when she reaches the final verses that you feel the true power of her voice. She sings of Ragnarök not as a distant threat or an abstract concept, but as a real event with real consequences. She sings of the sun growing cold and the stars falling from their courses, of the dead rising from their graves and the bonds that hold the world together finally snapping. And yet somehow the song isn't terrifying. There's sadness in it, yes, and a sense of inevitable loss. But there's also defiance and determination, and the unshakable belief that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory is impossible. When the music finally ends, the silence that follows is profound, not empty, but full pregnant with the weight of shared understanding. Around the hall you can see warriors wiping tears from their eyes, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming beauty of truth perfectly expressed. That Thor says quietly is why we fight, not because we can win, but because the alternative is unthinkable. Before the solemnity can become oppressive, a new voice rises from another part of the hall. This one is rougher, more boisterous, and it quickly becomes clear that a drinking song is starting up. Within moments, hundreds of voices have joined in creating a wall of sound that seems to lift the very roof. The song is about a warrior who tried to court a Valkyrie by challenging her to single combat, only to discover that she was far better with a sword than he was. It's crude and funny and completely ridiculous, and by the third verse, even Odin is smiling. The All-Father may carry the weight of cosmic responsibility on his shoulders, but he's still capable of appreciating a good joke. That's better, Loki says, with satisfaction. I was starting to worry we were all taking ourselves too seriously. A little existential dread is good for the soul, but too much can give you indigestion. The drinking song is followed by another, then another. Some are funny, some are sad, some are so old that nobody remembers all the words and everyone just improvises their own verses. Between songs, warriors stand up to tell stories about their lives, their deaths, their adventures in Valhalla, or just amusing things they've observed about their fellow einherjar. One warrior describes his ongoing attempts to teach a particularly stubborn raven to speak complete with dramatic reenactments of their conversations. Another tells about the time he accidentally wandered into the section of Valhalla where the berserkers live and found them having a knitting circle. A third shares his theory that the servers are actually minor gods in disguise, which would explain why they never seem to run out of food or get tired despite working constantly.
Is that true? You ask Eric during a brief lull between stories.
About the servers, probably, he replies. Half the population of Valhalla is technically divine in some way or another. God's giant spirits, minor deities, who've fallen out of fashion but still need something to do with themselves. The place is practically a refugee camp for supernatural beings.
What about us, the einherjar, I mean? Are we still human?
Eric considers this seriously. That's a good question. We were human when we died, certainly. But death changes you, and this place changes you more. We're something new now, not quite mortal, not quite divine. We're what humans become when they're given the chance to be their best selves for eternity. Before you can ask what he means by that, a commotion breaks out near the high table. Thor has apparently decided to demonstrate his hammer-throwing technique, and while his aim is perfect, the structural integrity of the hall's architecture is suffering for it. Mjolnir has embedded itself in one of the massive support pillars, and Thor is tugging at it with increasingly theatrical grunts of effort. It's stuck. he announces to the hall at large, as if this is the most surprising thing that's ever happened. Anyone want to give it a try? This, it quickly becomes apparent, is a regular entertainment. Warriors line up to attempt to lift the hammer, each one, approaching the task with varying degrees of seriousness. Some try brute force, some try technique, some try creative interpretations of what lifting actually means. None of them succeed, of course, but the attempts are often amusing enough to keep the audience entertained. The record for most creative failure, see, Loki informs you, belongs to a berserker named Grimjaw who tried to lift the hammer by convincing it that it was actually a feather. He spent 3 hours arguing with it about the fundamental nature of weight and mass before Thor finally took pity on him. Did it work, you ask? Define work, Loki replies with a grin. The hammer didn't budge, but Grimjaw's philosophical discourse was so entertaining that he got a standing ovation. As the formal storytelling winds down and conversations become more intimate, you find yourself curious about the rest of Valhalla. The Great Hall is magnificent, but Kayabre's descriptions of libraries, armories, and gardens suggest that what you've seen so far is only a small portion of this incredible place. Would it be possible to explore it, you ask Eric, during a quiet moment? Of course, he replies with enthusiasm. One of the privileges of eternity is having time to discover everything this place has to offer. Come, I'll show you some of my favorite spots. He rises from the table and you follow him toward one of the side passages you noticed earlier. The corridor is lit by the same warm, sourceless light that illuminates the Great Hall, and the walls are decorated with tapestries that seem to depict scenes from every culture's heroic traditions. Here, Greek heroes battle monsters with impossible anatomy. There, Chinese warriors perform feats that seem to defy the laws of physics. Further along, African champions hunt creatures of legend through landscapes that pulse with their own inner vitality. The tapestries are woven from the dreams of mortal storytellers, Eric explains as you walk. Every tale of courage ever imagined, every legend ever told around a fire, every story ever passed down from parent to child, they all find expression here. Valhalla exists partially outside normal time and space, so it can incorporate elements from past, present, and future simultaneously. The first room he shows you takes your breath away. It's a library, but one unlike anything you could have imagined. The shelves stretch impossibly high, filled with scrolls, codices, tablets, and books in every format ever devised by intelligent beings. The smell of parchment and ink and wisdom fills the air, and the sound is the gentle whisper of pages turning as invisible readers pursue knowledge throughout eternity. Every book that was ever burned, Eric says softly, every scroll that was lost to war or neglect, every poem that was forgotten when its last reciter died, they're all here. The accumulated knowledge and wisdom of every civilization that ever existed, preserved for those who have the time to truly understand it. You walk between the towering shelves, occasionally glimpsing titles in scripts you don't recognize, languages that may not have been spoken for thousands of years. But somehow you know you could read any of them if you chose to. Death has freed you from the limitations of linguistic confusion, just as it has freed you from so many other mortal constraints. I've been working my way through the military tactics section for about 30 years now, Eric mentions casually. Started with Sun Tzu, moved on to Caesar's commentaries, currently reading analyses of battles that won't be fought for another few centuries. It's fascinating how the fundamental principles remain constant even as technology and society evolve. The next room is the armory Kaebre mentioned, and it exceeds even your enhanced expectations. Weapons from every era and culture line the walls, not just functional tools of war, but artistic expressions of the warrior's craft. Swords that seem to glow with their own inner light hang beside spears with points carved from crystallized moonbeams. Axes with edges sharp enough to split atoms rest in racks next to bows that could shoot arrows to the stars themselves. These aren't just weapons, Eric explains, noting your amazement. They're ideas given physical form. Each one represents some aspect of the warrior's art, perfected to its absolute ideal. When we train for Ragnarök, we can choose from any of these tools, learning to master not just specific techniques, but the concepts they embody. You reach out tentatively toward a sword that seems to call to you a blade that perfectly balances power and precision, strength and elegance. The moment your fingers touch the hilt, you feel a rush of understanding. Not just how to use this particular weapon, but comprehension of every sword technique ever developed, every form ever perfected, every principle ever discovered by master swordsmiths throughout history.
That's Graham Reborn, Eric says approvingly. Forged from the essence of every legendary blade that ever existed, it chooses its wielders carefully. Apparently it sees something in you that it likes.
The sword feels perfect in your hand, as if it was made specifically for your grip, your strength, your fighting style. But more than that, holding it fills you with confidence that goes beyond mere skill. You understand suddenly that you're not just learning to use a weapon, you're connecting with the eternal tradition of those who have stood against darkness in every age. The garden Cairbre mentioned proves to be another revelation entirely. It's not simply a collection of plants, but a living ecosystem that seems to contain examples of every beautiful growing thing that has ever existed. Flowers bloom in impossible colors, their fragrances carrying hints of memories and emotions rather than simple scents. Trees bear fruits that nourish not just the body, but the spirit, and streams flow with water that seems to sparkle with captured starlight. The garden grows from the dreams and memories of everyone who has ever loved something beautiful enough to die protecting it. Eric explains as you walk along paths that seem to shift and change to lead you toward whatever you most need to see. Every flower represents someone's beloved garden, every tree someone's sacred grove, every stream someone's treasured water source. You find yourself drawn to a section where roses climb a trellis made from what appears to be crystallized music. The blooms are the exact shade of red that your mother grew outside your childhood home, and when you breathe in their scent, you're transported back to summer evenings when the world seemed full of infinite possibility. She's here, you know, Eric says, gently, somehow understanding the direction of your thoughts. Not physically, she didn't die in battle, but her love for you, her pride in your courage, the way she shaped the warrior you became, that's all here, woven into the very fabric of this place. Valhalla doesn't just honor the fallen, it honors everything that made them worth honoring. The concept is overwhelming in the best possible way. You're not just isolated from your mortal life, you're connected to its deepest meanings in ways that transcend physical presence. Every person who loved you, every lesson that shaped you, every moment of beauty that inspired you to become someone worth dying, courageously it's all preserved here, transformed into something eternal and imperishable. Is this what the gods intended, you ask, as you continue through the garden? This preservation of everything worth preserving. Eric considers the question seriously. I think the gods created Valhalla not just as a training ground for Ragnarök, but as a proof of concept. They wanted to demonstrate that some things are too valuable to be destroyed, even by cosmic catastrophe. We're not just preparing to fight, we're proving that the best of what exists can survive anything, even the end of everything. The tour continues through chambers dedicated to music, where instruments from every culture play melodies that seem to capture the essence of heroism itself. You visit halls where warriors practice not just combat, but all the arts of civilization, poetry, craftsmanship, storytelling, philosophy. Each room reinforces the same message that true warriors are not just destroyers but protectors and preservers of everything that makes existence meaningful. By the time you return to the Great Hall, you have a completely new understanding of your place in this cosmic drama. You're not just a soldier in an army, you're a guardian of culture, a keeper of wisdom, a living embodiment of everything that's worth fighting for. The Great Hall has transformed during your absence. The long tables remain, but many of the einherjar have gathered around the massive fireplaces that dot the hall's perimeter. The flames dance higher than they did earlier, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow that make the carved decorations seem to move with lives of their own. The overall mood has shifted from celebration to something more contemplative, more intimate. You find yourself drawn to one of these fireside gatherings where a diverse group of warriors sits in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The fire crackles peacefully, and occasionally someone adds another log or adjusts the arrangement of burning wood, but mostly they simply enjoy the warmth and the meditative quality of dancing flames. Eventually, a voice breaks the comfortable silence. It belongs to a woman whose appearance suggests she came from the lands where the great empires of antiquity once flourished. Her name is Thalia, and she died defending a city whose name has been lost to history, but whose culture contributed essential threads to the tapestry of human civilization. I've been thinking about the nature of memory. She says, her voice thoughtful and unhurried. In mortal life, we worried constantly about being forgotten, whether our deeds would be remembered, our names spoken after death, our contributions acknowledged by future generations. But here I understand that memory takes forms we never imagined. She gestures toward the fire, where the flames seem to respond by shifting into patterns that suggest scenes of battle and heroism. Every act of courage, every moment of compassion, every choice to stand against darkness, they don't disappear when the people who witnessed them die. They become part of the eternal record woven into the fabric of reality itself. A man sitting across from her nods in agreement. His name is Hanno, and he sailed from the great trading cities of the ancient world before dying in a naval battle against pirates who threatened merchant vessels carrying precious goods to distant markets. I've seen this in the library, he says. Stories that no human ever wrote down, deeds that no poet ever sang, sacrifices that no chronicler ever recorded, they're all there preserved in forms that transcend written language. The universe itself remembers every moment when someone chose virtue over safety. The conversation draws others into the circle. Soon you're surrounded by warriors from every era and culture, each adding their own perspective to the discussion of memory legacy and the ways in which meaningful actions transcend the limitations of individual mortality. What strikes me, says a Celtic warrior whose intricate tattoos tell the story of every battle he ever fought, is how interconnected all our stories are. In life, I thought I was fighting for my clan, my land, my people. But here I see that every warrior's struggle is part of the same eternal conflict between order and chaos, meaning and emptiness, hope and despair. His observation sparks a deeper discussion about the universal nature of heroism. Despite coming from vastly different cultures and time periods, these warriors have discovered that their individual stories share common themes: the choice to protect rather than exploit, to sacrifice rather than take to stand with the light rather than surrender to darkness. It's remarkable, observes a woman who bears the weapons and armor of the island nations, how similar our motivations were regardless of our different backgrounds. We may have called our causes by different names, served different gods, followed different codes of honor, but the essential choice was always the same. A Roman legionnaire who died at Hadrian's Wall leans forward to add his perspective. In life, I thought the empire I served was unique, that Roman civilization was fundamentally different from the barbarian cultures we fought against. But here, I've learned that courage is courage, honor is honor, sacrifice is sacrifice, regardless of language or custom or religious belief. The discussion continues as the fire burns lower, touching on themes that would have been impossible to explore fully during the pressure and urgency of mortal existence. These warriors have the luxury of eternity to examine their choices, to understand the deeper patterns that connect all their individual stories into something larger and more meaningful. Perhaps that's why we're really here, suggests Astrid, who has joined the circle sometime during the conversation. Not just to fight in Ragnarök, but to serve as proof that the best of human nature transcends all superficial differences. When the final battle comes, we won't be fighting as separate cultures or nations, we'll be fighting as embodiments of everything that makes existence worthwhile. The concept resonates through the circle like a note struck on a perfectly tuned instrument. Looking around at these faces representing every skin color, every cultural tradition, every historical era that has produced heroes, you see not diversity, but unity. Not differences, but shared commitment to the same eternal principles. In that sense, you find yourself saying, surprised by your own words, "We're already winning." Just by being here, by choosing to preserve and protect, rather than destroy and consume, we've proven that some things are stronger than death, more enduring than empires, more valuable than individual survival. The group considers this in thoughtful silence. Outside the great hall, you can hear the wind moving through the branches of Yggdrasil, carrying news from all the 9 worlds. But here beside this fire, surrounded by these faces, you feel connected to something even larger than the world tree, to the eternal human capacity for greatness that no force in the universe has ever been able to permanently extinguish. As the evening grows later and the fire burns down to glowing embers, the conversation turns to more personal matters. Warriors share memories of their mortal lives, not the dramatic moments that brought them to Valhalla, but the quiet times that gave their sacrifices meaning. Stories of children they protected, communities they served, traditions they helped preserve. "I remember the sound of my daughter's laughter," says one warrior, his voice soft with remembered joy. She would have been grown with children of her own by now if she lived. But that laughter, the pure, innocent joy of a child who knows she's safe because someone loves her enough to face any danger, that's what I was really fighting for. Others share similar memories, lovers' gentle words, friends, loyal support, the satisfaction of work well done, the peace of knowing you've contributed something positive to the world. These warriors didn't die for abstract concepts. They died for very specific, very personal manifestations of everything that makes life worth living. And now, concludes Thalia, we prepare to fight for all of it one more time. Not just our own memories and loves, but everyone's. Every child's laughter, every lover's gentle word, every moment of beauty and joy and peace that has ever existed or ever could exist. As the hours pass, the great hall gradually settles into a quieter rhythm. The largest gatherings break up into smaller groups. Conversations become more intimate, and the overall energy shifts from celebration to contemplation. Servers continue to move silently between the tables, but now they're lighting additional candles and oil lamps, creating pools of warm light that push back against the comfortable darkness, gathering in the hall's corners. The transformation is subtle but profound. The hall doesn't empty. Many of the einherjar continue their conversations, their craft work, their quiet contemplations, but the atmosphere becomes more introspective, more personal. You realize that this isn't just a shift in activities, but a recognition that different parts of the eternal cycle serve different purposes. The evening celebration fed the spirit. Now comes the time for deeper reflection and individual growth. You find yourself walking slowly through this transformed space, drawn by curiosity to explore areas you hadn't noticed during the evening's earlier festivities. The architecture of Valhalla reveals new details in the shifting light-carved beams that tell stories in runic script that seems to change meaning as you read it. Tapestries that move with lives of their own alcoves where individual warriors sit in quiet meditation or contemplation. In one such alcove you discover a warrior who appears to be from the lands far to the east, where great empires rose and fell centuries before your own people learned to work iron. He sits cross-legged on a simple cushion, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and measured. Despite the meditative posture, there's nothing passive about his presence. He radiates the kind of focused intensity that comes from years of disciplined practice. Forgive the interruption, you say quietly, prepared to move on if he prefers solitude. He opens his eyes and smiles an expression of genuine warmth that immediately puts you at ease. No interruption at all, brother. Please sit if you wish. I'm Li Wei, and I've found that meditation in Valhalla offers insights that were impossible during a mortal life. You settle onto a nearby cushion, curious about this perspective. How so? In life, meditation was always about escaping the pressures and distractions of the world, seeking peace amid chaos, clarity, amid confusion. Here, where peace and clarity are the natural state, meditation becomes something different. It becomes exploration of the cosmic currents that connect all things. As if to demonstrate, Li Wei closes his eyes again and extends his hand toward the carved wall beside your alcove. The intricate patterns begin to glow softly, revealing connections and relationships between the various scenes that weren't visible before. Warriors from different eras and cultures are linked by flowing lines of light that seem to represent shared experiences, common purposes, parallel journeys toward the same understanding. When you remove the noise of survival and immediate concerns, Li Wei continues, his voice taking on the rhythmic quality of someone speaking from a deep, meditative state. You can perceive the underlying structure of existence itself. Every heroic deed, every act of sacrifice, every moment of courage, they're all part of a vast web of meaning that spans across time and space. The visualization is mesmerizing. You can see your own story beginning to appear in the flowing patterns connecting to those of the warriors you've met tonight, linking to deeds performed by heroes you've never heard of, in times and places you've never imagined. The interconnectedness is overwhelming in its beauty and scope. Is this what the gods see? You ask softly. Perhaps. Or perhaps this is what we're meant to learn to see, so that when Ragnarök comes, we understand not just our individual roles, but how every action fits into the cosmic drama. We become not just warriors, but conscious participants in the eternal struggle between order and chaos. The meditation continues in comfortable silence, and you find yourself beginning to understand what Li Wei means. Without the constant pressure of mortal concerns, your mind can relax into patterns of perception that were impossible during life. You begin to sense the enormous currents of purpose and meaning that flow through Valhalla, connecting every warrior to every other warrior, and all of them to the greater destiny that awaits. When you finally open your eyes, the carved wall has returned to its normal appearance, but your understanding of it has been permanently changed. You can still sense the connections Li Wei showed you, even if you can no longer see them directly. The knowledge settles into your consciousness like a seed that will continue to grow throughout your eternal existence. Thank you, you say, and Li Wei nods in acknowledgement. "The gift of understanding multiplies when shared," he replies. "In life, wisdom was hoarded because there was never enough time to teach everyone who might benefit. Here, we have eternity to learn from each other. Every insight achieved by one einherjar eventually becomes available to all." Moving on from the meditation alcove, you encounter other warriors pursuing their own forms of nighttime contemplation. In one corner, a group practices forms of combat so advanced they barely resemble anything you recognize, movements that seem to incorporate elements of dance meditation and pure artistic expression. Their weapons trace patterns in the air that hang there for moments before fading, leaving behind a faint luminescence that suggests the motions themselves have some deeper significance. Theoretical combat, explains one of the practitioners during a brief pause. Her name is Valentina, and she died defending a mountain fortress against siege engines that seemed to belong more in the realm of legend than practical warfare. We're exploring fighting techniques that don't yet exist, methods that might be needed when we face enemies whose nature we can't currently imagine. The concept fascinates you. These warriors aren't just maintaining skills they learned in life, they're developing entirely new capabilities based on speculative understanding of what the final battle might require. They're preparing not just for known challenges, but for possibilities that exist only in potential. How do you know what to prepare for, you ask? We don't, Valentina admits with a grin. That's what makes it interesting. We extrapolate from what we know about the nature of chaos, the characteristics of the forces that will oppose us in Ragnarök, and the kinds of challenges that test the deepest levels of heroism. Then we develop techniques that address those theoretical requirements. She demonstrates a sequence of movements that seems to involve striking at multiple targets simultaneously while defending against attacks from directions that don't correspond to normal three-dimensional space. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time, a martial art designed for battles that transcend ordinary physical reality. In another area, you find warriors engaged in what can only be described as collaborative storytelling, but on a scale that dwarfs anything you've ever encountered. They're weaving together epic narratives that incorporate elements from every culture's heroic traditions, creating new myths that honor the universal themes while respecting the specific details of individual cultural perspectives. We're preparing the stories that will be told after Ragnarök, explains one of the storytellers, a woman whose voice carries the rhythmic cadences of ancient bardic traditions. If anything survives the final battle, it will need stories to give it meaning, context, and inspiration. We're creating the mythology that will guide whatever comes next. The stories they're developing are incredibly complex, incorporating not just events, but emotional truths, moral principles, and spiritual insights that capture the essence of why heroes choose to fight, even when victory seems impossible. They're creating a legacy that transcends victory or defeat, a testament to the value of the choice itself. As you continue your nighttime exploration, you begin to understand that Valhalla operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The surface level, the feasting, the fighting, the camaraderie serves important purposes of building strength, skill, and unity. But underneath that lies a deeper curriculum of cosmic education, preparing the einherjar not just to fight, but to understand their role in the fundamental structure of existence itself. Every activity, every conversation, every moment of quiet contemplation contributes to this larger purpose. The warriors here aren't just training their bodies and sharpening their weapons. They're developing the kind of comprehensive understanding that will be needed when they face challenges that go far beyond ordinary combat. In a quiet section of the hall, far from the main gathering areas, you discover something unexpected, a group of warriors who don't fit the typical image of Valhalla's inhabitants. They're older for one thing, their hair white or grey, their faces marked by the kind of deep lines that come from decades of serious thought rather than just battle scars. More importantly, they radiate a quality of wisdom that goes beyond mere knowledge or experience. "Ah, a new arrival," says one of them, looking up from what appears to be an intricate chess-like game played on a board with far too many dimensions. "Come join us. We are the Wisdom Keepers, and we have much to discuss." The speaker is a tall, dignified woman whose bearing suggests she once held positions of great authority. Her name is Boudica, and she died leading her people against imperial legions that seemed impossible to defeat. But her role in Valhalla has evolved far beyond her warrior origins. "We are the einherjar who have been here the longest," she explains as you settle into their circle. "Centuries, some of us millennia. We've moved beyond the phase of learning combat techniques and building physical strength. Our current preparation focuses on the deeper implications of what we'll face in Ragnarök." Her companion in the complex game introduces himself as Hannibal, the great general whose tactical innovations are still studied by military strategists. "The final battle won't be won through sword work alone," he says, moving a piece that seems to affect multiple dimensions of the board simultaneously. "It will require understanding of strategy on a cosmic scale, the ability to coordinate forces that include gods, giants, elements of nature itself, and abstract concepts made manifest. Around them, other wisdom keepers pursue studies that seem almost impossibly advanced. One is working with mathematical formulas that appear to describe the fundamental structure of reality itself. Another is analyzing what looks like star charts, but the constellations shown include some that exist only in potential rather than actuality. A third is reading from a book whose pages seem to contain text that writes itself as she reads, as if the act of comprehension is creating new knowledge." "What do you study?" what you ask, genuinely curious about this level of preparation. "Everything," Boudica replies simply. "The nature of time and causality, the relationship between individual will and cosmic destiny, the way that heroic choices create ripples across all possible realities. We're learning to think like gods while maintaining the hearts of mortals." Hannibal looks up from his game to add his perspective. "In mortal life, we understood tactics and strategy within the limitations of human conflict. Here, we're learning to comprehend warfare on a scale that includes the fundamental forces of existence. How do you coordinate an attack that involves not just armies, but the principles of order and chaos themselves?" The questions they're grappling with are staggering in their scope and complexity. These aren't just military considerations, but philosophical challenges that strike at the heart of what it means to exist, to choose to strive for something greater than mere survival. "The key insight," explains another wisdom keeper, an ancient Chinese philosopher-warrior whose name is lost to history, but whose understanding clearly transcends such mundane concerns, "is that Ragnarök isn't really about destruction. It's about transformation. The old order will end, yes, but something new will emerge from that ending. Our job isn't to prevent change, but to ensure that the change serves the cause of justice and meaning rather than chaos and emptiness." This perspective reframes everything you thought you understood about your purpose in Valhalla. You're not just preparing to fight a hopeless last stand, you're preparing to midwife the birth of whatever comes after the current cosmic order reaches its inevitable conclusion. But how can you influence something that fundamental, you ask? "Through the power of conscious choice," Boudica replies. "Every decision made with full understanding of its cosmic implications creates patterns that influence the shape of what emerges. We're not just warriors, we're gardeners of possibility, cultivating the conditions that will allow beauty, justice, and meaning to flourish in whatever reality follows this one." The conversation continues late into the night, touching on concepts that challenge your understanding of identity, purpose, and the nature of existence itself. These wisdom keepers have spent centuries learning to think beyond individual concerns, beyond even species-level concerns, to focus on the health and development of consciousness itself as a cosmic principle. This is what awaits you, Hannibal says, as the conversation begins to wind down. Not immediately. You'll spend decades, perhaps centuries, mastering the more obvious lessons of courage, skill, and fellowship. But eventually, if you choose to continue growing, you'll join us in grappling with these deeper questions. The prospect is both exciting and humbling. To think that your development as a warrior hero could continue indefinitely, always revealing new levels of understanding and responsibility, new ways to serve the cause of consciousness and meaning in the universe.
Is there an end to it, you ask? A point where you've learned everything there is to learn?
The wisdom keepers exchange glances that suggest this is a question they've considered many times. Finally, Boudica speaks for the group. We don't think so. We suspect that consciousness and the universe itself are engaged in an eternal process of growth and discovery. Every challenge overcome reveals new possibilities. Every victory opens doors to greater responsibilities. We may be preparing for Ragnarök, but Ragnarök itself may be just another step in an infinite journey. The idea that even the end of the world might be just one milestone in an endless process of cosmic development is both overwhelming and deeply reassuring. It suggests that no sacrifice is ever truly final, no victory ever truly complete, no growth ever really finished. As the night deepens, you notice the great hall beginning to transform once again. Servers appear with soft woolen blankets and thick furs, arranging sleeping areas that somehow provide perfect privacy despite being in the open hall. The magic of the place seems to extend to these practical considerations. Each sleeping space becomes its own small sanctuary, isolated from the sounds and activities of others, despite being surrounded by hundreds of fellow warriors. Eric finds you near one of these sleeping areas carrying a bundle that turns out to contain bedding and a simple but comfortable-looking sleeping robe. "Your first night in Valhalla," he says with a smile. "I remember mine couldn't sleep for hours because I kept expecting someone to wake me up and tell me it was all a dream. Spoiler alert, it's not a dream, and the sleep here is better than anything you experienced in life." The sleeping area he guides you to is perfect, a simple but comfortable bed arrangement positioned near one of the great fireplaces where the dying embers cast gentle dancing light across the walls. The furs and woolen blankets are softer than anything you remember from your mortal life, and when you lie down you sink into comfort that seems to embrace your entire body. The dreams are the best part. Eric continues settling into his own nearby sleeping area. In life, dreams were random, chaotic, often meaningless. Here they're purposeful. You might dream of battles you've never fought, skills you've never learned, places you've never seen. Some say the dreams are Odin's way of continuing our education, even while we rest. "Do you dream of the final battle?" you ask. "Sometimes," Eric admits. "But those dreams aren't fearful, they're inspiring. You see yourself fighting alongside the greatest heroes of all time, standing against impossible odds for the most important cause imaginable. You wake up feeling ready, eager even." The conversation continues in whispers as other warriors settle into their own rest. The great hall hasn't emptied. Many of the einherjar continue their conversations, their craft work, their quiet contemplations. But the energy has shifted to something more introspective, more peaceful.
Will I see you tomorrow?" you ask as Eric arranges his own bedding. "Oh, yes," he chuckles. "We'll fight together in the morning. Exercises die horribly. Together then feast together again. Tomorrow evening. It's a good life, brother. Repetitive in the best possible way."
As you pull the furs up around your shoulders, you take one last look around the great hall. The sight that greets you is something beyond beautiful hundreds of warriors from across time and space, all united in purpose, all preparing for the same ultimate challenge. The firelight flickers across their peaceful faces, and you can hear the soft murmur of final conversations, the gentle sounds of a community settling into rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new lessons, new opportunities to grow stronger and wiser. But tonight, for the first time since your death, you feel completely safe, completely at peace, completely where you belong. The last thing you see before closing your eyes is the intricate carving on the beam above your head, a scene of warriors marching toward a distant light, their faces determined but not afraid. It's a fitting image to carry into sleep, this reminder that even endings can be beginnings, that even the greatest challenges can be met with courage and fellowship. As sleep approaches, you become aware of something remarkable happening to your consciousness. Instead of the gradual fade into unconsciousness that characterized mortal sleep, you feel yourself transitioning into a different state of awareness, one that's deeper than waking thought, but more vivid and purposeful than ordinary dreams. The transition begins with a gentle loosening of your connection to immediate physical sensations. The warmth of the furs, the softness of the bedding, the flickering light from the fireplace all remain present, but become less demanding of your attention. It's as if your consciousness is being freed to focus on more subtle and profound inputs. Around you, the great hall begins to reveal additional layers of reality that weren't visible to ordinary perception. The carved decorations on the walls and pillars don't just tell stories, they become windows into the actual events they depict. You can see ancient battles playing out in miniature, watch legendary heroes making the choices that earned them places in eternal memory, witness moments of courage and sacrifice from across the breadth of human history. The other sleeping warriors become visible not just as physical forms, but as living stories. Each one radiates a soft light that seems to contain the essence of their heroic journey, their struggles, their victories, their ultimate sacrifice, and their ongoing development in Valhalla. The overall effect is like lying in a constellation of human nobility, surrounded by hundreds of examples of consciousness choosing virtue over safety. But it's your own inner experience that proves most remarkable. As sleep deepens, you feel your individual identity expanding to encompass perspectives and experiences far beyond your personal history. You begin to understand events and concepts not through explanation but through direct knowing, as if the accumulated wisdom of Valhalla is being shared with you through some form of consciousness beyond ordinary thinking. The sensation is profound but not overwhelming. Rather than losing yourself in the vastness of expanded awareness, you feel more completely yourself than ever before. It's as if your true nature, the essential core of who you are beneath all surface identities and roles, is finally being revealed and celebrated. Images begin to flow through this expanded consciousness, but they're not random dream fragments. They're carefully structured learning experiences, each one designed to teach you something specific about the nature of heroism, sacrifice, and cosmic responsibility. You see yourself in various scenarios, some based on historical events, others on future possibilities that may never come to pass, but that illuminate important principles about courage and choice. In one sequence, you find yourself standing with the defenders of a city whose name you don't recognize, facing an enemy whose weapons and tactics are completely foreign to your experience. But instead of confusion or fear, you feel a deep understanding of your role in the defense and a confidence that comes from centuries of preparation. The specific details may be unfamiliar, but the essential challenge, standing against chaos in service of order, is the same one you've been training for since arriving in Valhalla. The dream shifts, and now you're fighting alongside creatures that clearly aren't human beings of living light. who wield weapons forged from crystallized music warriors whose very presence seems to strengthen the foundations of reality itself. But again, instead of alienation, you feel profound kinship. The external forms may be different, but the internal commitment to justice and meaning is identical to your own. Another transition brings you to what appears to be a vast library, but one that contains more than books. The shelves hold crystallized memories, bottled experiences, and what can only be described as compressed wisdom. You realize that this is Valhalla's true archive, not just a record of heroic deeds, but a repository of the understanding that those deeds generated. Every lesson learned through sacrifice, every insight gained through struggle, every moment of clarity achieved through courage is preserved here for the benefit of all who come after. As you move through this dream library, books open themselves to reveal their contents directly to your consciousness. You absorb tactical knowledge that spans from ancient warfare to conflicts that haven't happened yet. You gain understanding of cultural traditions from civilizations that existed on the other side of the world from your birthplace. Most importantly, you develop insight into the universal principles that connect all expressions of heroism across time, space, and circumstance. The educational aspect of the dream continues as you experience yourself in the role of teacher as well as student. You find yourself sharing the lessons of your own heroic journey with warriors who face challenges similar to ones you've already overcome. The knowledge flows both ways, learning from their experiences while contributing your own insights to the collective understanding. But the most profound aspect of these educational dreams is the gradual recognition that they're not happening in isolation. You're connected to every other sleeping warrior in Valhalla, participating in a shared learning experience that encompasses the collective wisdom of every hero who has ever lived. The dreams weave together into a vast tapestry of understanding that no individual consciousness could achieve alone. This communal aspect of dream learning means that your individual growth serves the entire community, while the community's development enriches your personal understanding. Every insight you achieve becomes available to your fellow einherjar, while their discoveries enhance your own educational experience. It's cooperation and mutual support extended into the realm of consciousness itself. Sleep in Valhalla comes easily sinking over you like a warm tide that carries away the concerns and questions of your first day among the einherjar. But this isn't the blank unconsciousness of mortal rest. This is something richer, more purposeful, as if sleep itself has been elevated to serve the greater purpose of preparation and growth. Your dreams begin with memory, but memory transformed. You're standing once again on that final battlefield, but now you see it with the clarity that only comes with distance and understanding. You watch yourself make the choices that led to your death, but instead of regret or second-guessing, you feel only a deep sense of rightness. Every decision, every moment of courage or hesitation was part of a pattern that led you exactly where you needed to be. The scene shifts, and suddenly you're not just watching, but participating in battles you've never fought, wielding techniques you've never learned. You find yourself standing shield to shield with warriors from every era of human history, Roman legionnaires and medieval knights, Mongol horsemen and Aztec, jaguar warriors, samurai and Celtic champions. Despite your different origins, you fight as one unified force, each warrior's strengths complementing the other's weaknesses. In the dream, you understand intuitively how to coordinate with fighters whose styles are completely foreign to your experience. The Romans' precise formations blend seamlessly with the Celtic warriors' wild charges, while the samurai's discipline channels the berserker's fury into devastating effectiveness. It's a preview of what the einherjar can become when they truly unite not just a collection of individual heroes, but a force that represents the very best of human martial achievement. The dream battlefield shifts and changes, sometimes showing familiar landscapes from your mortal life, sometimes revealing places that exist only in legend or imagination. You fight on the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, its crystalline surface reflecting the light of distant stars. You battle in the roots of Yggdrasil itself, where the world tree's massive foundations stretch into infinity. You stand in places that exist at the intersection of all realities, where the fate of everything that ever was or ever could be hangs in the balance. But the most profound part of the dream isn't the fighting, it's the fellowship. In every scenario, no matter how desperate the situation or how overwhelming the odds, you're never alone. The bonds forged in Valhalla's Great Hall extend into these dream battles, creating a network of trust and mutual support that makes victory possible even against impossible enemies. You dream of Thor not as the jovial dinner companion you met earlier, but as a force of nature unleashed in the service of order. His hammer doesn't just crush enemies, it strikes at the heart of chaos itself, each blow resonating across dimensions to strengthen the foundations of reality. Fighting alongside him, you feel your own strength magnified, your purpose clarified. You dream of Odin not seated on his throne in observation, but fighting in the front ranks with a spear that cuts through more than flesh. It severs the bonds of fear and despair, leaving only determination and hope. His single eye sees not just the battlefield, but the cosmic significance of every action and fighting under his leadership. You understand that every blow you strike serves a purpose beyond mere combat. The dreams show you Ragnarök not as an ending, but as a transformation, the moment when everything you've learned and become will be tested against the ultimate challenge. You see yourself and your fellow einherjar not as victims of fate, but as its willing agents, choosing to stand against forces that would reduce existence to primordial chaos. In the deepest part of the dream, you find yourself in conversation with warriors you've never met but somehow know fallen heroes from futures that haven't happened yet, champions from battles that won't be fought for centuries. They tell you that Valhalla exists outside normal time, that the preparation happening here draws its strength from past, present, and future simultaneously. Every act of courage in mortal history, one of them explains, adds to our strength here. Every person who chooses to stand against overwhelming odds, every parent who protects their child, every soldier who dies for something greater than themselves, they all contribute to what we're building in this place. As the dream begins to fade, you find yourself back in the Great Hall, but seeing it with new eyes. The carved decorations aren't just art, they're a record of every heroic deed ever performed, a testament to humanity's refusal to surrender to darkness. The long tables aren't just furniture, they're gathering places where the wisdom of ages meets the courage of youth. The eternal feast isn't just celebration, it's communion in the deepest sense, the sharing of purpose that transcends individual identity. You understand now why the einherjar can face each day's death without fear, why they can prepare for a battle they know they'll lose. They're not fighting for victory in any conventional sense. They're fighting to ensure that the concepts worth fighting for, love, justice, beauty, hope, survive even cosmic destruction. Sleep in Valhalla comes easily sinking over you like a warm tide that carries away the concerns and questions of your first day among the einherjar. But this isn't the blank unconsciousness of mortal rest. This is something richer, more purposeful, as if sleep itself has been elevated to serve the greater purpose of preparation and growth. Your dreams begin with memory, but memory transformed and elevated. You're standing once again on that final battlefield, but now you see it with the clarity that only comes with distance and cosmic understanding. You watch yourself make the choices that led to your death, but instead of regret or second-guessing, you feel only a deep sense of rightness. Every decision, every moment of courage or hesitation was part of a pattern that led you exactly where you needed to be. The dream perspective allows you to see things that were invisible during the actual event. You can perceive the cosmic forces at work in that moment, the way your choice to stand and fight rather than flee sent ripples across multiple dimensions of reality. Your individual act of courage strengthened the foundations of order throughout the universe, contributing to the eternal struggle against chaos in ways that your mortal mind could never have comprehended. The scene shifts, and suddenly you're not just watching, but participating in battles you've never fought, wielding techniques you've never learned. You find yourself standing shield to shield with warriors from every era of human history, Roman legionnaires and medieval knights, Mongol horsemen and Aztec jaguar warriors, samurai and Celtic champions, Viking berserkers and Spartan hoplites. Despite your different origins, you fight as one unified force, each warrior's strengths complementing the other's weaknesses in perfect harmony. In the dream, you understand intuitively how to coordinate with fighters whose styles are completely foreign to your waking experience. The Romans' precise formations blend seamlessly with the Celtic warriors' wild charges, while the samurai's discipline channels the berserker's fury into devastating effectiveness. It's a preview of what the einherjar can become when they truly unite, not just a collection of individual heroes, but a force that represents the very best of human martial achievement across all cultures and ages. And the dream battlefield shifts and changes, sometimes showing familiar landscapes from your mortal life, sometimes revealing places that exist only in legend or imagination. You fight on the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, its crystalline surface reflecting the light of distant stars and providing footing that seems solid as granite yet flexible as water. You battle in the roots of Yggdrasil itself, where the world tree's massive foundations stretch into infinity, and the very air thrums with the power that connects all 9 realms. You stand in places that exist at the intersection of all realities, where the fate of everything that ever was or ever could be hangs in the balance. These battlefields aren't bound by ordinary physical laws. Gravity shifts according to tactical need. Time flows at different rates in different areas, and weapons can strike at enemies that exist in parallel dimensions. Yet somehow, your dream self adapts to these impossible conditions with the confidence of long experience. But the most profound part of the dream isn't the fighting, it's the fellowship. In every scenario, no matter how desperate the situation or how overwhelming the odds, you're never alone. The bonds forged in Valhalla's Great Hall extend into these dream battles, creating a network of trust and mutual support that makes victory possible, even against impossible enemies. You feel the presence of Eric fighting beside you, Astrid guarding your flank, Magnus providing tactical guidance from his vast experience with foreign warfare. You dream of Thor not as the jovial dinner companion you met earlier, but as a force of nature unleashed in the service of order. His hammer doesn't just crush enemies, it strikes at the heart of chaos itself, each blow resonating across dimensions to strengthen the foundations of reality. Fighting alongside him, you feel your own strength magnified your purpose, clarified your understanding of the cosmic significance of individual courage, expanded beyond anything you thought possible. You dream of Odin not seated on his throne in observation, but fighting in the front ranks with a spear that cuts through more than flesh. It severs the bonds of fear and despair, leaving only determination and hope. His single eye sees not just the battlefield, but the cosmic significance of every action and fighting under his leadership. You understand that every blow you strike serves a purpose beyond mere combat. You're not just defeating enemies, you're defending the very possibility of meaning and purpose in the universe. The dreams show you Ragnarök not as an ending, but as a transformation, the moment when everything you've learned and become will be tested against the ultimate challenge. You see yourself and your fellow einherjar not as victims of fate, but as its willing agents, choosing to stand against forces that would reduce existence to primordial chaos. The battle is terrible and beautiful, simultaneously a cosmic opera where every note contributes to a harmony that will determine the nature of whatever reality emerges from the destruction. In the deepest part of the dream, you find yourself in conversation with warriors you've never met, but somehow know fallen heroes from futures that haven't happened yet, champions from battles that won't be fought for centuries or millennia. They exist in Valhalla's eternal present, their stories woven into the same tapestry that includes your own heroic journey. Every act of courage in mortal history, one of them explains their voice carrying the authority of someone who has seen the cosmic consequences of individual choices, adds to our strength here. Every person who chooses to stand against overwhelming odds, every parent who protects their child, every soldier who dies for something greater than themselves, they all contribute to what we're building in this place. The warrior's words illuminate something crucial about Valhalla's true nature. It's not just a gathering place for the heroic dead, it's a convergence point where every act of courage throughout history contributes to a growing reservoir of strength and wisdom. Your individual sacrifice was important not just for its immediate effects, but for the way it added to this eternal accumulation of heroic purpose. Time works differently here, another dream warrior explains. We draw strength from courage that hasn't happened yet, learn from sacrifices that will be made in ages to come. The final battle we're preparing for isn't just about defending what exists now, it's about ensuring that the capacity for heroism itself survives whatever cosmic changes are coming. As these educational dreams continue, you begin to understand that your preparation in Valhalla serves multiple purposes simultaneously. On one level, you're training to be an effective warrior in the final battle. On another level, you're becoming a guardian of the eternal principles that make heroism possible. And on the deepest level, you're helping to ensure that consciousness itself, the capacity for choice growth and moral development, continues to exist regardless of whatever transformations reality undergoes. The dreams shift to show you the daily routine you'll soon begin participating in. You see yourself waking with the other einherjar, sharing the morning meal that provides strength for the day's challenges, then moving to the training grounds where you'll practice the arts of war with an intensity and purpose impossible in mortal life. The daily battles aren't random violence, but carefully structured learning experiences, each one designed to teach specific lessons about courage technique and the bonds that unite warriors in common cause. You witness your own death in these practice combats, not as failure but as opportunity. Each death teaches you something new about facing the ultimate challenge, about maintaining courage, even when victory seems impossible, about the difference between mere survival and meaningful existence. And each resurrection reinforces the lesson that consciousness is stronger than physical destruction, that the things worth fighting for transcend individual mortality. In the dreams, you see yourself growing stronger, wiser, more skillful with each passing day. But more importantly, you see yourself developing the kind of comprehensive understanding that will be needed when facing challenges that go beyond ordinary combat. You're learning to think like a cosmic force while maintaining the heart of a mortal hero, to coordinate with gods and giants while remembering what it means to be human. The dream education continues with visions of the deeper mysteries of Valhalla, the libraries where all knowledge is preserved, the workshops where weapons are forged from concepts rather than mere materials, the gardens where beauty itself grows in forms that nourish the soul. You see yourself eventually joining the ranks of the wisdom keepers, grappling with questions that challenge the foundations of existence itself. But always, throughout all of these educational visions, the dreams return to the central theme: fellowship. You're never alone in these experiences. Every challenge is shared, every victory celebrated together, every lesson learned becomes part of the collective wisdom available to all. The individual hero's journey that brought you to Valhalla continues here, but it's transformed into something larger, a communal epic, where every warrior's development contributes to everyone else's growth. As the dream begins to fade, you find yourself back in the Great Hall, but seeing it with new eyes enhanced by cosmic perspective. The carved decorations aren't just art, they're a record of every heroic deed ever performed, a testament to humanity's refusal to surrender to darkness regardless of the odds. The long tables aren't just furniture, they're gathering places where the wisdom of ages meets the courage of youth, where individual stories weave together into an epic that spans all of time and space. The eternal feast isn't just celebration, it's communion in the deepest sense, the sharing of purpose that transcends individual identity while honoring the unique contribution each warrior makes to the greater cause. You understand now why the einherjar can face each day's death without fear, why they can prepare for a battle they know they'll lose. They're not fighting for victory in any conventional sense. They're fighting to ensure that the concepts worth fighting for, love, justice, beauty, hope, the very possibility of meaning itself, survive even cosmic destruction. As your educational dreams continue to unfold, you become aware of layers of instruction that operate on levels beyond conscious thought. Valhalla's teaching methods don't just convey information, they transform the very structure of your consciousness, preparing you for challenges that require not just skill and courage, but entirely new ways of perceiving and understanding reality. In one dream sequence, you find yourself in what appears to be a vast amphitheater, where the greatest heroes of history gather to share the deepest lessons of their experiences. But instead of speaking, they communicate through direct transmission of understanding. You absorb their wisdom, not through words, but through experiencing their insights as if they were your own memories. A figure you recognize as Achilles shares the hard-won knowledge of what it means to choose glory over long life, but his teaching goes deeper than the familiar story. You experience his moment of choice not as a simple decision between alternatives, but as a profound recognition of the different types of meaning available to consciousness. Some forms of significance require duration, others achieve their full expression only through intensity and sacrifice. The lesson continues as you encounter heroes whose names were never recorded in any mortal chronicle, but whose sacrifices were no less meaningful. A young mother who died defending her children from raiders teaches you about love's power to transform ordinary people into forces that can stand against any darkness. Her sacrifice didn't preserve her own life or even necessarily save her children, but it demonstrated something eternal about the nature of love itself, that it creates meaning that transcends individual survival. A simple farmer who stood alone against an army of locusts that threatened to destroy his community's entire harvest shares his understanding of duty that goes beyond dramatic gestures. His heroism wasn't the stuff of epic poems, but his willingness To exhaust himself in service of others' well-being represents a form of courage that's no less essential than battlefield valor. Through these dream teachers, you begin to understand that heroism takes countless forms, each one contributing essential elements to the cosmic struggle against meaninglessness. The warrior's courage in battle, the parent's protective love, the craftsman's dedication to excellence, the philosopher's commitment to truth, all are different expressions of the same fundamental choice to serve something greater than narrow self-interest. The educational dreams expand to show you the enemy forces you'll eventually face in Ragnarök. But these aren't simply monsters to be defeated. They're manifestations of principles that represent genuine threats to the possibility of meaning and value in the universe. The giants embody the raw forces of entropy and dissolution that constantly work to break down complex structures and return everything to primordial chaos. The Wolfenrir represents the consuming hunger that devours not just individuals but entire concepts, leaving nothing behind but emptiness. Understanding these enemies requires grasping them not just as physical threats but as cosmic principles. The giants aren't evil in any personal sense. They're expressions of natural forces that serve necessary functions in the universe's cycle of creation and destruction. But when these forces grow beyond their proper bounds, they threaten to eliminate not just individual lives, but the very possibility of life consciousness and meaning. Your dream education teaches you to recognize these threats in their early stages, to understand how entropy begins to overwhelm order, how meaninglessness starts to erode purpose, how despair gradually undermines hope. The daily battles in Valhalla aren't just practice for physical combat. They're training in recognizing and countering these fundamental threats to consciousness itself. But the dreams also reveal that the forces of destruction aren't the only challenges you'll face. Some of the most dangerous enemies are corrupted versions of virtue's courage that has become mere aggression love, that has transformed into possessiveness, justice that has degraded into vengeance. These corrupted virtues are particularly dangerous because they mimic the very qualities heroes are meant to embody, making them difficult to recognize and counter. Learning to distinguish between authentic virtue and its corrupted counterparts requires a level of wisdom that goes beyond simple moral rules. It demands the ability to perceive the deeper patterns that connect choices to consequences, to understand how the same action can serve completely different purposes depending on the consciousness behind it. The dream curriculum continues with lessons about the nature of time itself and your role as guardians of meaningful continuity. You learn that Valhalla exists partially outside normal, temporal flow, allowing its inhabitants to influence events across past, present, and future simultaneously. Every heroic choice made by a mortal warrior strengthens the einherjar in their eternal preparation, while the knowledge and wisdom accumulated in Valhalla somehow flows back to inspire and guide heroes in all times and places. This temporal complexity means that your individual development in Valhalla doesn't just prepare you for future challenges, it actively supports heroes throughout history who face similar tests of courage and principle. The strength you gain through your training, the wisdom you acquire through your studies, the fellowship you build with your companions, all of these somehow become available to every warrior who has ever chosen duty over safety, meaning over mere survival. Understanding this temporal interconnectedness transforms your perspective on individual responsibility. Every moment of your existence in Valhalla, every effort you make toward growth, and understanding every relationship you build with your fellow einherjar contributes to a cosmic support network that spans all of history. You're not just preparing for your own role in the final battle, you're helping to ensure that heroism itself remains possible throughout the entire scope of existence. The educational dreams culminate with visions of what lies beyond Ragnarök, not just the destruction, that everyone expects, but the creative possibilities that emerge from cosmic transformation. You see new forms of consciousness being born from the ashes of the old order reality structures that incorporate everything valuable from the previous cosmic cycle, while eliminating the flaws and limitations that made the destruction necessary. Your role in this cosmic rebirth isn't just to fight against the forces of destruction, but to serve as a seed of the new reality, a concentrated essence of everything worth preserving, refined, and perfected through your experiences in Valhalla. The knowledge you've gained, the relationships you've built, the understanding you've developed all will contribute to the foundation of whatever emerges from the cosmic transformation. This perspective reframes the entire meaning of your preparation. You're not just training to make a heroic last stand. You're becoming a carrier of evolutionary potential, a living embodiment of consciousness's capacity for growth and transformation. When the final battle comes, victory won't be measured by who survives the immediate conflict, but by whether the seeds of meaningful existence are successfully planted in the new reality that follows. You wake gradually, consciousness returning like the slow lightning of dawn. The great hall is quieter now, though far from empty. Some warriors continue their conversations in hushed tones, others work quietly at various tasks, and many sleep peacefully in their alcoves. The fires have burned lower, but they haven't gone out. Nothing in Valhalla seems to truly end, only transform. The first thing you notice is how rested you feel. Not just physically refreshed, but restored in some deeper way. The dreams haven't faded like mortal dreams do. Instead, they've settled into your memory like experiences you've actually lived. You remember the techniques, you learned the comrades, you fought beside the cosmic perspective that transformed your understanding of purpose and duty. Rising quietly so as not to disturb Eric, who sleeps peacefully nearby, you make your way toward one of the great windows. The view outside is breathtaking, a landscape that seems to combine the best features of every beautiful place you've ever seen or imagined. Rolling hills covered in emerald grass stretch toward mountains that pierce a sky painted in impossible shades of gold and crimson. Forests that look ancient beyond measure border meadows where flowers bloom in colors that have no names. But it's not the beauty that captures your attention most. It's the sense of anticipation that seems to emanate from the very air. Something is building, gathering strength like a storm preparing to break. You realize that dawn in Valhalla doesn't just mark the beginning of a new day. It announces the approach of something much more significant. A gentle hand touches your shoulder, and you turn to find Ingrid Harpsinger standing beside you. She looks as if she's been awake for hours, though she shows no signs of fatigue.
Your first dawn, she says softly. How do you feel?
Different, you answer honestly. Like I understand things now that I couldn't grasp yesterday. She nods approvingly. The dreams do that. They're not just entertainment or random neural activity, they're part of your education. Each night here, you learn things that would take decades to master in mortal life. By the time Ragnarök comes, you'll be ready for challenges you can't even imagine yet. Around the hall, other warriors are beginning to stir. The servants appear as if from nowhere, bearing platters of food that smell incredible: fresh bread, honey fruits that seem to glow with their own inner light. But there's something different about this meal, something more purposeful than the celebration of the previous evening. The morning feast, Ingrid explains. Sustenance for what's to come. Today, you'll experience your first battle practice with the einherjar. You'll learn what it means to die and be reborn, to fight without fear of permanent consequence, to push yourself beyond every limit you thought you had. The concept should be terrifying, but somehow it isn't. The dreams have prepared you, showing you glimpses of what awaits, and helping you understand that what might seem like violence is actually a form of education. Every clash of weapons will teach you something new about courage, skill, and the bonds that unite warriors across all boundaries. Will it hurt, you ask, remembering Loki's honest assessment from the previous evening? Yes, Ingrid says simply. But pain here serves a different purpose than pain in mortal life. There it was a warning, a signal to retreat and protect yourself. Here it's instruction teaching you about your limits, your fears, your capacity for endurance. And when each day's battle ends and you return to life, you'll understand things about yourself that no amount of peaceful contemplation could reveal. As the morning light grows stronger, painting the great hall in shades of gold and amber, you feel a growing excitement. Not the nervous energy of someone facing the unknown, but the eager anticipation of a student about to begin the most important lesson of their existence. The einherjar around you are beginning to prepare for the day's activities, checking weapons, adjusting armor, sharing final words of encouragement. There's no fear in their movements, no reluctance or dread. They approach the coming battle with the same enthusiasm they brought to the previous evening's feast, as another opportunity to excel, to grow, to become more than they were. As the great hall fills with the golden light of dawn, you take one final look around the place that has become your new home. The carved decorations seem more alive than ever in the morning light, their intricate patterns telling stories of courage and sacrifice that span the breadth of human history. The long tables where you shared mead and fellowship just hours ago stand ready to welcome you back for another evening's celebration. The alcoves where warriors pursue their crafts and contemplations promise endless opportunities for growth and discovery. But most importantly, the faces of your fellow einherjar reflect the same sense of purpose that now burns in your own heart. These aren't refugees from mortality, hiding from the inevitable end of all things. They're active participants in the cosmic story, willing agents of justice and order who have chosen to stand against chaos, even knowing the ultimate cost. Thor appears near the great doors, Mjolnir gleaming at his side, ready to lead the morning's training exercises. His presence fills the hall with electric energy, the promise of challenges that will test every skill you possess, and some you haven't discovered yet. But there's also comfort in his strength, the knowledge that you don't face these trials alone. Odin watches from his high seat, his single eye, taking in every detail of the gathering warriors. In his gaze, you see not judgment, but something deeper, pride perhaps, or satisfaction at seeing his great work approaching completion. Every einherjar in this hall represents a choice he made, a warrior he deemed worthy of ultimate honor. You're part of something larger than yourself, larger than any individual achievement or failure. Eric approaches carrying weapons and armor that gleam in the morning light. His smile is warm with genuine friendship, the kind of bond that can only be forged between people who face extraordinary challenges together. Ready for your first real day in Valhalla, he asks, and there's excitement in his voice rather than apprehension. Ready, you reply, and you discover that you truly are. The dreams have shown you what's possible. The feast has fed not just your body but your spirit, and the fellowship has provided the foundation of trust that makes courage possible. Together you join the stream of warriors flowing toward the great doors and the training grounds beyond. Today you'll learn what it means to fight without fear, to die without despair, and to return to life with greater understanding than before. Tonight you'll feast again with comrades who have shared the deepest possible experiences of challenge and triumph. And someday, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps in 1,000 years, you'll march out of these doors for the final time, ready to face Ragnarök itself. with the skill, wisdom, and unshakable purpose that only Valhalla can provide. You are Einherjar, now one of the honored dead, a warrior in the army of the end times. But more than that, you are part of something eternal, the enduring human refusal to surrender to darkness, the willingness to fight for justice and beauty and hope, even when victory seems impossible. As you step through the great doors into the golden morning light, you carry with you the peace of perfect purpose, the joy of true fellowship, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that your existence in life and in death serves the greatest cause imaginable. Welcome to Valhalla. Welcome to eternity. Welcome home.